Welcome back. I know you didn't go anywhere. I didn't either. Once again, my name is Carl Soule. I am based in the Hollywood office. I focus on feature film and broadcast workflows, working with filmmakers throughout the Los Angeles region. And I'm going to spend the next half hour or so talking about the latest features we unveiled here at IBC 2018 for Adobe After Effects. It's been a very interesting few years with After Effects. This is the 25th anniversary of After Effects. So we're pretty excited about that. The program's been around for quite a while. And a lot of the work that's been happening kind of under the hood, a little secretively, has been modernizing a lot of the code within After Effects, really providing the new performance that is capable of things like advanced GPU support, a better multi-threading and multi-core support for different effects within After Effects. We're seeing huge speed and performance gains by having this new architecture within After Effects. And in addition to all of this performance enhancement, we've also been thinking about how people use After Effects and try to enhance the workflows that we see people using After Effects for. The first area I want to talk about is 3D integration. When you're using After Effects to composite with 3D elements, anything with a Z depth to it, bringing it into a scene, we wanted to make this a bit easier. After Effects does have a lot of built-in tools, including a really wonderful 3D motion tracker. I've actually already ran that on this scene ahead of time just to get the information, have After Effects analyze and figure out the geometry as the camera is panning and kind of bouncing around a little bit. And I've been asked to put in a background element into this. This young musician on a skateboard here, we want to make sure and make this scene a little bit more interesting. So here I just have a series of wavy lines, but using a special camera, I've actually kind of positioned the camera and rotated everything to give it a Z depth. So this is actually, the lines are not getting smaller, they're actually moving away from the camera a bit in this shot. So this actually has these animated audio paths actually do have a Z value, so they're moving further and further away from the camera here. Now I want to be able to combine these two together, and in the past, if I took this the lines and just nested them into the original shot like this, basically, as soon as I nest this in, that 3D data would go away. I wouldn't have access to that 3D data anymore. But this new release of After Effects is going to include a whole series of tools that now can access that depth information. 3D channel extract can actually read the Z depth from this nested comp, this pre-comp, and I can use that and apply things like depth maps, depth of field effects, fog effects, color effects that leverage that Z information. Just to show you what this looks like, here we have this nested comp. If I want to get started with this and convert this into a depth map, I'm going to use 3D channel extract and just drag this and drop it on here. And 3D channel extract basically gives me an alpha, shows me the alpha information. The whitest areas are closest to the camera. The darker areas are furthest away from the camera. You can see everything has kind of a nice gray gradient. So now I'm actually leveraging and I'm using that Z depth information in the pre-comp within my main composition here. Now, just to jump ahead, I've got a lot to show you here. If you have questions about how all this works, please definitely talk to the folks at the After Effects pod in the back. But just to show you what you can really do with this, here I have that same set of lines. If I go into my effect controls, I've built out a stack of different effects in here. So I have things like depth of field that just adds a little bit of blurriness to the lines as they move further and further back. I have a fog effect that basically blends out the color and kind of gives it a bit of an atmospheric effect, matching the color of the lights in the background. So that blue channel in particular gets blended out and just helps to sell this a little bit nicer, blends it into the background. Now the next thing we need to do is probably do a little bit of roto work and composite out. I need to pull the skater to a higher layer here, and I've actually already done that. And to do this work, a lot of people use a separate application called Mocha. For a long time, After Effects has included a light version of Mocha called Mocha AE, and I could simply select a layer and choose to track that layer in Mocha. In this new release, we're actually making Mocha work as a plugin within After Effects. So a lot of the controls for the matting, for the masking, are available and modifiable directly here inside of After Effects as a plugin. And even if I have to go into the full Mocha interface, I can do that. There you can see the masking that was done inside of Mocha. So I can actually see this. And this, because this is running as a plugin, After Effects is handling all the I/O functionality as far as, bringing the file into the Mocha interface. So Mocha AE now becomes compatible with virtually any file format that you can bring into After Effects. You'll be able to bring it into Mocha. So there's never that moment where you're working on a broadcast file, it's in an MXF wrapper, and it wouldn't import in the past. You had to render it and convert it to something that Mocha would read. Now, because it's working as a plugin, we can work directly inside of After Effects. So by doing that, you can see we've now taken this skater shot and added these nice radio lines, kind of extending off into the distance. Really changed the feel of the scene, really created a nice composite. All right. Moving quickly, we've got a lot to cover. I want to talk a little bit about using the Puppet tool. Now, the Puppet tool has been inside of After Effects for many, many years. It actually dates all the way back to After Effects CS3. And it was introduced in After Effects. It went from After Effects into Photoshop. The Photoshop team looked at it and said, that's great, we want to be able to use that in Photoshop. Then the Illustrator team said, that's great, we want to use that in Illustrator. Then we created an entirely new application called Character Animator, leveraging the same style technology. And we thought, wouldn't it be great to just take some of these improvements and enhancements that have come over the years, bring it back into After Effects. So the new Puppet tool was introduced in the spring. It has better mesh generation. It has better deformation functions built into it. So it's a new version of the Puppet tool. This new release for the fall, we are continuing to evolve and enhance this. To start with the Puppet pin tools, we now have a new advanced pin tool. When you use the advanced pin tool, this gives me the capability of adjusting X, Y. I can rotate using the pin tool. I can even use this to do scaling functions to kind of simulate some Z depth in a two-dimensional piece of artwork. You can see the mesh is currently showing. I have that turned on. I'll go ahead and turn that back off. And we also are introducing some new style pins for what we call bend pins. Now, before I add the bend pins, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple on the arms here. And right now, if I try and lift up this arm, you see it's not bending where I would expect it. Instead, it's kind of stretching. And this one's the same way. It's not actually lifting the arm up. So if I apply a bend pin at the, would you call this an elbow? I think you call it an elbow. I'll put it right there. Now, when I grab this pin, you'll see that we're actually getting a bit of motion, and we're actually seeing it start to deform and stretch where I would expect it. Even if I grab the head here and start to kind of move backwards and forwards, you see that the arms are now moving in a much more natural fashion, even though I'm only animating and moving around one pin. So there's quite a bit you can do with this new Puppet tool. Again, built into After Effects. This still has things like Motion Sketch, where I can grab a pin, hold down a key, and actually record my motions direct, turning an Illustrator file like this into an animated character within a composited scene. Now I want to take a little bit of time and talk about time and talk about something called responsive design. This was a concept that was originated in the new text engine and the new type tool inside of Premiere Pro. It's the idea of designing an animated graphic and being able to protect regions of it so that you can stretch the graphic out over time and not scale keyframes to make the animation slower or longer. In this example here, I'll go ahead and play this out so that you can see this. I have an intro graphic, I have a middle section, and then I have something at the end where everything fades off. Now, right now, I have timed this out to be about 5 seconds. But I want to be able to use this in a longer sequence. I want to be able to use it in something that's maybe 10 seconds long or 15 seconds long, but I don't want the speed of my animation to change. I just want to stretch out the middle, the blank sections where I don't have any keyframes. Using the work area bar, I can take the work area bar and choose a region of my comp. And this new menu command, responsive design time, lets me protect all the keyframes in this area and create an intro. I can also do the same for the end. I'll protect the end and make this an outro. And something that After Effects can do that the Premiere titler can't do, at least not yet, is I can even protect this middle section and again create protected region from work area. So what does this look like? Well, let me twirl up a couple of these items here. And I'm just going to open up a different comp and just take this and nest it in here. You'll notice that the pre-comp that I just dragged in now has these blue regions that show these areas are protected. So right now this will still play at the same rate and duration as before, but I can also squeeze it down. And you'll notice that the blue areas do not change in duration, but the areas that are not protected are what are actually scaling in size. So if I wanted to, I could even stretch this out further, and you see that these unprotected regions become longer. The blue regions stay the same size. So now if I want, let's make this really, really short here. I can do that. Now the whole animation will actually play back at a much slower rate, or each animated section continues to play at the same rate as before. It just speeds up the overall time it takes to do this. I'll play that one more time with it previewed. Boom, boom, fade out. Now, why is this important for After Effects? It's cool to be able to do this in After Effects, but what's most important about this is if you are building motion graphic templates inside of After Effects, these protected regions carry over in the template, so the editor now has the ability to take this motion graphic template and actually stretch it and fit it to fill the area on the timeline in Premiere Pro when they're using the motion graphic template in Premiere. So it's an important thing to note as you're building out and working with motion graphic templates. Now, if you have not heard of motion graphic templates before, Victoria Neese, the product manager of After Effects, is going to be on stage a little bit later today, and she's doing an entire half-hour presentation talking all about the value of this new format that we've introduced, something called motion graphic templates, or we call them MOGRTs for short, rhymes with yogurt. And MOGRTs are really, really cool because it basically bundles up all of the files that make up a composition and puts it in one file that can be brought into Premiere Pro, dragged and dropped on the timeline. And most importantly, it can be modified in ways you, the motion graphic designer, decide to provide to the editorial team. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of this. And to start with, let me just bring open some animated graphic data here. Here we're using some animated graphics. These are expression driven. You'll notice there's an expression down here at the bottom. New for this release of After Effects is we're updating the engine that does expressions to a much more modern form of JavaScript. The old engine dates back to about 1999. It really hasn't changed much. The new engine is one of the latest ECMA compliant forms of JavaScript. So in a lot of cases, it's actually 3 to 5 times faster than the older engine. And it also provides for some more modern functions that didn't exist in the old way of writing expressions. Now, if I want to work on this and create a motion graphic template out of this, the first thing I need to do is open up the Essential Graphics panel. This panel is where I drag and drop any controls I want to give to the editing team. I just simply drag and drop them from my composition up into the Essential Graphics panel. So if I had a particular color that I wanted to work with, or a particular, here's the text color value. Looks like I've already done this here. If I wanted to add something different, let's see here, percentage outer. Here's a text value. If I wanted to grab this and make that adjustable, I can simply drag it and drop it up into this panel. And this is now an editable function for the editing staff when I bundle this and create my motion graphic template. New in this release, when working with text, we now have the option, and I repeat, it is an option, to enable the motion graphic template to have its fonts changed. In other words, allow the editing team to pick a different font from what I have designed in After Effects. This is optional. If you work with a series of editors that really, really like Comic Sans and they're going to replace all of your fonts with something you don't want, don't check this box. But we had a lot of requests from people wanting to be able to change the fonts of an After Effects motion graphic template over in Adobe Premiere. We now have that option. I can simply turn that off and say no custom font selection if I want to maintain control over that. Okay. Now, the other thing about this particular motion graphic template that I'm working on, look at the name of the top layer here. This top layer is a CSV file. It is a spreadsheet inside of the composition. If I right-click on this and say Reveal in Finder, it will take me to the spreadsheet. This is a very simple spreadsheet. It's got one line of text here, but I can now drag and drop. I can import CSV, TSV files. I can import JSON files and use the data within those files to link up layers of my composition. So this is really, really cool. Rather than having to manually type in the title, if I'm making different versions of this, I can actually pull from a spreadsheet. So what does this look like? How do I go through and do this? Is this really expression heavy? Do I have to type a lot of stuff to make this happen? No, actually, if I wanted to rig up the title layer to the title field in the spreadsheet, all I have to do is grab the pick whip from the source text and link it to the title layer. And now the text changes to recurring dreams. That actually is coming from the spreadsheet instead of something that I manually typed in. Now think about how convenient this is if you have a producer that is in charge of building out a list of all the lower third names, and they're putting it into a spreadsheet for you. Rather than having to manually look at the spreadsheet, type in the names, make adjustments, you can actually just import the spreadsheet and link up the fields and effectively be done. So there's a lot that you can do with this. You can set up a slider. It's possible to rig a slider to say, pick a row in the spreadsheet based on a slider. And there's some examples. You'll see Jason Levine showing some of this over in Adobe Premiere later on. I'll let Jason and I'll let Victoria kind of talk to you how this works over in Adobe Premiere. But just know you have this capability of bundling everything together. Once I put this together, I can click Export Motion Graphic Template from the Essential Graphics panel. And from here, I can pick where I want to save it. I can even save a motion graphic template into a library to give to somebody else, maybe in even a different facility, because libraries will sync up using Creative Cloud. All right. Almost out of time. There's a couple more things that I want to talk to here. We have continued to offer new functionality dealing with immersive experiences. VR 360 is something we've been focused on in the past. Just know that After Effects in this next release is going to add support for the VR 180 format. Now, the whole idea of 180 is it's half of 360. What we're finding in most cases, people doing immersive content, if you do 360, it's a lot of extra work, and the vast majority of people who watch your content never move past here or here. So by focusing the production just on a 180-degree viewing field, it cuts the work in half and still creates really nice immersive experiences. If you want to check out how this works, definitely go around to the back of the pod. We do have an Oculus setup. You can actually experience some of this content on the Premiere Pro pod and see it actually playing back live off the timeline in Premiere. But After Effects has this same functionality where I can set up and add a viewing experience. I can put a headset, connect a headset up, and actually see my compositions within the headset here inside of After Effects. Performance-wise, there's a whole slew of new effects that have been GPU accelerated. Things like color balance, curves, fill, exposure, linear wipe, noise, tritone, set matte, Venetian blinds, all the basic properties. Motion blur is now a GPU accelerated effect. And if I go over into my effect and presets, we have actually made it easier to see which effects are GPU accelerated. We've added these little icons here so that I can see which effects are GPU accelerated. If you stay within the realm of GPU accelerated effects within After Effects, it's amazingly fast. We get a lot better performance. Now, we're working slowly but surely going into all of the hundreds of different effects within After Effects. We're working with our third-party customers who build plugins for After Effects to get people, get more and more stuff moved to the GPU. The longer you can stick with GPU accelerated effects, the faster After Effects performs. Now, there are some effects that work better with CPU-driven effects, and in those cases, we're modernizing these effects to make them use multiple cores, to just be faster on modern processors, and we're seeing big speed improvements as well there. And the last thing that I want to just spend a moment talking about is dealing with color. The Luma Tree technology that we have within Premiere Pro also lives inside of After Effects. And so anytime you see modifications made to Luma Tree for Premiere, those benefits also come across into Adobe After Effects. New in this release, we've actually created something called selective color grading curves. So this includes curves like hue versus saturation, hue versus hue, hue versus luma. There's a bunch of them in here. You can see each of these, Luma versus saturation. And basically what these enable me to do is to pick a specific color within a scene and then start to modify and play around with that. Now, we've changed the interface a bit. We used to have kind of a circular interface for hue saturation curves. We've made it more of a linear design, which is more of an industry standard. More people understand it. But we also wanted to improve on it and enhance it a little bit. So we have added this little slider here. So when we get into situations where we're trying to adjust the color and it's kind of going across the edge here, you can see I've got a keyframe here, it dips down, but then the other keyframe is over on this side. I can use this slider to actually move this over so that I can see it in the middle and I can manipulate it a little bit better, moving this up and down. So you can see here I'm actually changing the color of the dresses, and this young lady over here has a different color dress, so I could use this hue versus hue adjustment to try and match that in across there. Jason's going to go into much more detail in his Premiere Pro section, talking about how the new Luma Tree effects enhance your color workflow, but just know that everything that's in the Premiere Pro demo is also in the Luma Tree panel inside of After Effects as well. And with that, I've just given you guys a little bit of a taste of some of the new features coming in the next release of After Effects. Definitely, if you want to ask more questions, there's an After Effects representative around the back of the booth. There's a pod there. Typically, it's manned by somebody from the After Effects team, so it's a rare opportunity to actually talk with the engineering team that develops the software. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you again. My name is Carl Soule.